Hey guys, and welcome to Jammin. Today's video is all about the Overwatch World Cup. Specifically, we want to take a look at the stats that are being shown in-game and see whether they do a good job of presenting information that is useful to the spectators. Alright, so let's take a look at this first stat being presented to us in-game. We have ultimate kills, hero damage done, eliminations, death, and all things that you're familiar with if you play the game. But the question I have about this is, how do you know whether this is a good stat or a bad stat? As of right now, with the information being presented in this box, it's really hard to tell. I mean, 4 ultimate kills seems pretty good, but I don't know how long the game has been going for, whether it's counting last game and this game together, or is it an entire match history? No idea. So these are the kind of stats that you need to provide some sort of clarity to. Is it in-game or not in-game? And that's where I propose that instead of using stats that are overall performance indicators, which can tend to get muddy, I think it would be a lot better if these stats were per minute stats. The reason why I think per minute would be interesting is it would become a good comparison point when you show another hero later on, or if you compare it to the enemy team. It'll give you a very concrete set number that doesn't change all over during the course of a match. Like, I don't want to be going through the match and say, well, 3,000 damage seems to be good at the moment, and then later on try to figure out whether 7,000 damage later on the match is still a good number or not, because I have to go do the mental math myself. And so again, this is information that comes up and I'm going to be like, okay, it's there, but I don't really know what to do with it. What would be really helpful with statistics is that it gives you the information to see some sort of number and do something with it, as opposed to just being, that's cool. We need to move past that. Another minor quibble I have about this that's throwing me off a little bit is if you look at the bottom right corner and try to figure out what team this person is playing on, it's not immediately obvious. We have white text and white backgrounds on the stats that seem to correlate to France, not to mention a blue color for the name that also correlates to France. However, we are being told this is actually the Chinese team player, you can tell by the red shirt. What there should be happening here is there should be a very clear team name on here that makes it so that it's immediately obvious, especially to people who aren't paying attention to exactly what's happening. You should be able to clearly tell who the stat is being shown and what it's for. Okay, so I probably already talked about that stat enough. What's really cool here is the first person view switches over to Eileen, so you can see the gameplay in action. You go, oh wow, this is really cool. So this is a good thing. And it was also really great to see the minimap to begin with, because the minimap is so awesome for seeing positioning that you can't see in first person view. So let's go on to the next example. Okay, so this is not exactly a stat, but I just think it's really worth pointing out. This is a great thing that they're doing in between matches. They're basically showing cool information about the lore, about the characters, stuff that you didn't know about the game, to get people excited about it. And it's really, really important that the game does this, and that we do this as a league, because if the league doesn't make it easy for casuals to watch, then it just becomes something that only elite people watch, and then everybody else just doesn't care about it. There should be something that that pulls you in, and it gives you a reason to stay to watch the whole event. In this next clip, we'll see the attackers coming out of the spawn room, and a stat gets shown on the screen that is actually really cool. What I love about this is now we have information that's very clear. It's talking about the Chinese team. You can see the background. There's a title on it that's interesting that gets you to take a look at the stat, speed delivery, and we see that 10 pulse bombs have been earned in an average of 50 seconds. Any player that plays Overwatch should have a good idea that 50 seconds is really darn fast to be earning an ultimate. Now, it's still hard to get the context of it if you don't play Overwatch, but at least it gives you some information, because it's being told that it's speedy, so it's telling you this is a good number, right? So this can be something that can be used for comparison. Now, the problem with it is potentially somebody who's newer to the game may not know this is the tracer that is being played. So what could potentially be improved is just to add a tracer symbol or something so that you know which character is being played. And this is, again, not for the experts. This is for the people that are new to the game. You want to make the stats easy to understand, and if you make it complex or make people have to remember everything, this is something that could potentially lose people on the stats. So let's listen to this next clip and see if there's an opportunity to use some stats.
cover has not stopped. France still grinding their way forward through the streets phase here on Nimbani.
AKM with that
nice rocket.
That Helix rocket accuracy. He is known for being one of, if not the best player in the world when it comes to Helix accuracy. And you see it, it's his signature hero in this game, and time again he puts on that clinic.
Did we just hear the commentators say that Helix rocket kills were very important? It kind of reminds me of a video I did before where I was talking about what was important to get wins and gain SR as Soldier, and sure enough, it is the #1 statistic. So this is an opportunity to show the world what is a good Helix rocket kill and why it's so important. A few seconds later in the broadcast, they showed this Sharpshooter screen, which is kind of similar to how the pulse bomb kills was. But so what we have here is we have AKM has a critical hit accuracy of 12% as Soldier 76, and has claimed 5 Helix rocket kills. So again, there's some questions here that, like, this is giving good information, and this is great and all because we can see 5 Helix kills. That the commentators just said it was important, and they're showing that the kills are happening, which is making you think, oh man, this guy is really cool. The problem I have here again is, where's our context for understanding whether 12% accuracy is good or bad with critical hits? And on top of that, those 5 Helix rocket kills, is that for the match? Is this just for one part of this map? I don't know what it is and what the context is. So this is information that, like, yes, this is so great for showing the audience, but we need more information available to us to make a decision whether this is a good stat or a bad stat. Just as much as if you're watching a football game or soccer or whatever, what other sport you're watching. You can't just show a blind stat like, well, this person scored 10 points. Well, great, they scored 10 points. But we need information. Is that a good number or is that a bad number? Or are you just giving information for the sake of information? Yes, it is a helpful statistic for understanding, but if you don't ever get to see Helix rocket kills again, then it might as well just be a random blurb and that's it. It doesn't really mean anything. As opposed to, if you make it a point to show another person, then you can compare the two players and say, this player was doing better than the other player, or vice versa. So let's take a look as another random stat pops up on the screen, but this one has a little bit more context. What I like about this is they've now put the wording at the bottom, this game. It suddenly changes everything, and now you have a little bit more context about the information. You have 1.7 kills per Dragon Blade and 1300 damage. Now suddenly everything is in context, and you can use this information in probably a more interesting way. You can know if you've played Genji yourself. You can go, great, that's a lot of damage to deal. You can go look at the kills per Dragon Blade and say 1.7 kills is, you're guaranteeing at least a kill, probably 2 each time he pulls out a Dragon Blade. That's pretty good. So he's pretty consistent. And this is good information for a player to use for context. Now again, we still want to see those at the end of the game. We want to be able to see a total Dragon Blade kills, and that'll give us an idea whether he's still doing good or not, or whatever. But overall, I think the idea is definitely right behind showing these stats and pieces of information. It's just a matter of the execution so that it's very easy for spectators to figure out whether the information is and whether it is relevant or not. So in this next clip, we're going to see McCree bust out his Deadeye. He doesn't land a kill, and suddenly we're presented stats for AKM on the McCree. And there's some big problems that are popping up here that I think could be addressed, would make it a lot more interesting. So what you may have noticed in this sequence was that the hero damage being done was actually going up as he was dealing damage, which is great. This is showing a live stat. But unfortunately, because of the size of the font and because there isn't any emphasis placed on it, you can't necessarily tell unless you're paying attention that those numbers are actually changing. What would be great is for some way to highlight the statistics changing so that you can see that damage being done and some surprising things happening. So if you could suddenly see the hero damage starting from 2100 and jumping up to 2300 in a very short time, you know, wow, he did a really good job. This is information that, again, if you were to present it in a different way, may do a better job. One way would be to highlight it with like bonuses that pop up. Another way to do it would be to switch over to some sort of like speedometer or gauge that shows you their damage per minute rising as the action increases and then falling as the action decreases. It would be an interesting way to show a new light or a new method of showing damage being dealt and how effective a player is doing. So let's talk about another big problem with the stats being shown right here is how long has this player been playing on this hero? So one would be like, well, actually, I have no idea. And neither do I. I think it was about a minute or two, maybe 3. I'm not 100% sure. So immediately these stats, again, lose kind of a relevance to it when you can't tell how long or when this player switched. Maybe he used it for the first point, but didn't use it during the second point when they were moving the cart. I don't really know, and you can't tell from these stats either. This is why having more stats that are based on per minute, or at least have a timer or some sort, it will give us more information so we can make a better idea of what these stats actually mean. So let's take a look at this final stat here from, I believe this is going to be Leave again, on the Tracer. And what you're going to see is the hero damage done, eliminations, deaths. So the same information I'm going to say before. You're trying to show a generic piece of information that says these are stats you should care about and should be interested in, but there's no set of information to say whether this is good or bad. Well, you'd assume 0 pulse bomb kills is bad, but 5,000 damage, I don't know if that's good, bad, or or whether to be indifferent to it at all. What I think would be a great way, even if you can't get to those stats that are per minute, though I argue you should, is why can't you show a comparison between the enemy's Tracer versus your Tracer, one way or the other, and that would give you the context information that would make you understand whether someone was doing good or bad. Funny enough, this last piece of information that I think is important to talk about is the scoreboard. The scoreboard you think might be like a no-brainer sort of thing, but honestly, even in this, there are some small details in here that would be really, really helpful to make it easy for the viewer to understand where the game is at and what point it's at. So you can tell by the bolding in the second column that that's probably what's actively being played on right now, especially with the scoreline of 0-1 and no score on the second point. So my problem here is, how do you know who's going next and whether somebody's in an advantage or not, how much time is left, or anything about the current match? Seeing 3-0 only tells you that I guess they got the payload to the end, especially if you know the game. But if you don't know the game, you have no idea. I guess France scored some points. I guess China needs to score points on their own, but who's attacking next? I don't know. You'd have to assume, you could probably guess at it and try to figure out, but I think it would be really, really helpful if there's something to point out, a big arrow or something to target to say, China's going to attack next and they have a chance to get 3 points on their attack. And that way you know what are they fighting for. If you don't know what they're fighting for, it's hard for you to be interested in the next set. So let's talk to some final observations about watching this game. First, I'm super thrilled that there's going to be an Overwatch League, that we get to watch pro games being played, and we get to see new strategies, we get to see people doing great shots, and everything about it. And most importantly is that we're actually getting to start to see some stats involved with this game, because seeing the game without stats, like, yes, you can still play it without stats, of course, but stats are so interesting, can add so much to making the game interesting to watch and to understand and to learn. I don't want to just play the game, I want to understand the game and understand all the nuances behind it. That's it's fun to me, and I imagine it's fun to a lot of other people. So what I really hope for is that more and more stats are being shown and developed, that these stats have context and information as opposed to being showed as cool little bits. Yeah, cool information is great, but I want information that I can actually do something with and learn from with, and we can discuss and be like, I think AKM is better than this other player based on X, Y, and Z stat, as opposed to just going, he looked good in this game. It's like, yes, I want to have him look good and have the stats behind it to show and back it up. It's interesting and makes the game fun to watch. A second thing that we need to talk about is, what are the stats for the other players going to be about? I mean, we have stats for offensive heroes, and it's pretty obvious getting kills is good. But what about tanks? What about supports? Did you notice that none of the examples I showed you had anything to do with supports or anything to do with tanks? That's because that's not being shown. I don't think players understand or even know what stats are good or bad. I mean, we could assume that blocking things with your shield is good, but how much blocking is good? How much damage should a tank be doing? How much damage should a support be doing? These are things that we want to be able to study and understand. And if we don't get stats and information from Blizzard, there's only so much we can do. I mean, I've done videos on tanks, I've done videos on supports, and yes, I have come to some interesting conclusions and learned stuff, but they're all based on aggregated stats. So yeah, we can learn something from career profiles, but I want to learn stuff from individual games. How much healing should be done when you're looking at this map? Is Soon doing a good job on Tracer? Yeah, maybe, but I want to know what the supports are doing. So we need to see information related to supports so we can figure this stuff out. And hopefully Blizzard actually releases it as opposed to just saying, we'll take care of everything and we'll let you know what those stats are. Because the more people that can take a look at the stats, the more likely we are to come up with what is good and what is bad. Is Transcendence good? How much Transcendence healing should you expect it to do? That sort of stuff. And let's talk about the final point, and probably another thing that really bothers me about a lot of the information that we see. A lot of it is aggregated and overall summaries, but it does not split up attack versus defense, or what map type are they playing. We have all this information that's aggregated, and it's like, yeah, that's great, but what's the difference between attacking and defending? What's the difference between different map types? Why do the comps that are used by pros, why are they good, and what makes them important? And that sort of stuff can't be done until we start breaking down the maps one at a time. So yes, we can break it down with some video and take a look at watching it, but if we don't have the statistics information behind it, we can't make the same kind of conclusions. We just have to watch the video and go, well, it looks like it's doing good, or it's looked like it's doing bad based on the kill feed. The kill feed is a good starting point, but it's so basic, and at this point, there isn't that much more we can learn from just the kill feed. We need more information. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. Okay, I got that all out of my system. I'm honestly very excited to see what's coming up in the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing we have the preseason coming up on December 10th, and Overwatch League coming up in just a month. So hopefully we're going to see some new information, and we'll be able to start looking into more stats, and I'm hoping to get my hands on some information. If I can't, we're going to find something that we can go take a look and analyze, because I really enjoy the data analysis part behind Overwatch, and hopefully I can give you guys some information that you can take into your own games. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Storming into the point though, there's the second ult now. AKM on his own a little bit. Discord orb on him, needs to be careful. China certainly seeming to be coming out better in this fight at the moment. And this could be trouble for Team France. This barrage not getting quite enough. Back into OT now. Oh, it's so close.